I'd like to call this regular council meeting of June 28th to order. We have no public hearing today, and I'll have my announcements will be very short and brief. I just wanted to pass on the congratulations from council and the community to all of the grads of 2016. I will be attending the grad ceremony on Thursday, and I also just want to remind everybody that Friday is July 1st, and I know that the community has a lot of great events planned, and I'm looking forward to all the festivities and encourage everybody to participate, whatever they feel like participating in on July 1st. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councilor English, Councilor Nixon, all in favor? Motion is carried. And I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting June 14th. Councilor English, Councilor Sauls, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes of the June 14th meeting? Okay. We have no delegations as well today, and just moving into item 8A, which is old business.
I will move forward 8A, that official community plan amendment bylaw number 2113 be adopted.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And then B.
8B, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2114 be adopted.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion? Did you ever know? No. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item C.
8C, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2115 be adopted.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Wait for someone to say something.
I will move 8D, that the municipal ticket information system amendment bylaw number 2116 be adopted. Oh, sorry, that one. Still illustrations. Is on a roll there.
Well, you're so good at making motions that we can carry on. So the motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Orlando. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Orlando.
Yeah, this is final adoption for changes to the MTI ticket bylaw. Most notably, it's a bit harder to see in this one for someone who's looking at it for the first time. The previous editions had the red type, this one has the black type. But basically, we've added a bunch of new fines, adjusted some of the other ones. Notable items are there's the chicken bylaw stuff in there. Now that we have the chicken bylaw, we needed the elected fines. And for sound noise bylaw violations, there's a new progressive fine system. So first offense, second offense, third offense, it gets worse each time, and that's designed to deal with people who are problems. So that's the gist of it.
Councilor Nixon.
I think it's good that the new noise bylaw is beefed up. I think that's really good. And the chicken bylaw tickets are in there, and having a rooster is not allowed in Revelstoke, just a reminder. And I know that the local food initiative, food security people are looking for a bee bylaw to come from council. So I think, it's good that people reflect on being good neighbors and keeping the new chicken bylaw, following the rules and being good to the neighbors.
Keep your chicken under control, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, totally.
Councilor English.
I'd just like to thank staff for all the work that's gone into this. It's come out of a few different committees, and I like it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. New business.
Your worship, I'll bring this.
Your worship, just before we get a motion on the floor, I'm going to ask Councilor to consider whether he should declare conflict.
Yeah,
This deals with short-term vacation rentals?
Yeah. But they're clear conflict on this just because it's regards to vacation rentals, which is the industry we're in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chabot. Councilor Orlando.
Yes, item 9A, I move that the draft UBCM resolution read collection of PST and MRDT in participating areas on short-term accommodation and background information be approved.
Motion by Councillor Wendell, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion, Councillor Brothers.
Can I just ask, maybe Mr. Chabot, you have this information, it deals with only 4 units at a time, the PST and GST applies to only 4 units. What's the magic of 4 units?
Your worship, that's what's in the Provincial Sales Tax Act, that if a person is advertising for rent and renting more than 4 or more units, then PST becomes due and payable on the booking of that accommodation.
So we're just following the act that's there?
Basically, and your worship, I apologize, it didn't follow the normal committee course, but I was approached early last week by the Accommodation Association on behalf of the BC Hotel Association to have council consider submitting a resolution for debate at the UBCM convention. And as I noted in my report, this is similar to what the Chamber of Commerce had approved, the Revelstoke Chamber at the BC Chambers of Commerce AGM held last month. I know it's a little bit odd and offside to be doing this in the midst of community consultation, but the resolution to the UBCM merely asks the provincial government to ensure tax fairness and level playing field by collecting all applicable taxes on short-term accommodation rentals offered by online booking platforms and other means. So this is dealing with the explosion of vacation rentals in communities throughout British Columbia through platforms such as Airbnb, VRBO. You know, to date, the province hasn't undertaken any enforcement action, and we think that they can be part of the solution to getting a handle on these issues in communities. Normally this would run a slightly different course, but the deadline for submission to UBCM is Thursday this week, and so we were out of time. So took that, put it together, had a conversation with the CEO of the Hotel Association of BC. They're satisfied with this resolution, and I think it's good to support it. It's very similar to one which Sun Peaks Council endorsed a week or so ago, although ours is more specific as to the action that should be undertaken.
And just to remind council that it also aligns up with our guidelines of vacation rental of maximum 4 units. Councillor Nixon.
Well, I just think it's really important that we follow through on this and not miss the opportunity that our voice is heard at the provincial level. And it's a good thing to get it in on time.
Okay. Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, in general, I support this concept. I think eventually we're going to have to get to a system that has fairness in taxation for everyone involved. I believe that similar resolutions are likely to be coming this meeting at the upcoming UBCM. And I did notice in there that part of the reason we're doing this today is because of the June 30th deadline, and I just wanted to check that this isn't something, a motion that someone else has already put forward at SOGA. I wasn't at SOGA this year.
No,
I think so. Councillor Nixon.
Your Worship, nobody was really speaking to it other than us from Revelstoke.
Okay.
Any more?
Your worship, further, I guess this could, if council endorses this resolution, could form part of a response to Minister Fassbender, where he's looking for feedback on the sharing economy, and I'm looking at Mr. Strachan because I think at the end of the consultation period, we'll compile something for consideration of submission to the minister. Just further, one thing I wanted to mention in regards to the community consultation, that this resolution doesn't impede or get in the way of any local regulatory response in addition to this.
Yeah. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. We'll let our councillor back in.
To move so we can get forward here. The 9B1, that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2109 be read at first time.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. And Mr. Strachan, you have a presentation?
If your worship, council wishes, we have a brief presentation. The subject application is a OCP amendment as well as a zoning bylaw text amendment to add a CD zone and the rezoning of the subject property to that zoning district. It has a number of resolutions involved with this component. The application was introduced to council at the last meeting, seeking approval of the application only. These larger projects, we break it into two components. We come forward with the application for approval first, then bring forward the bylaws at the next meeting to allow for council's time to digest what's being presented and to review the information before considering first and second reading of the bylaws and scheduling of a public hearing. So what you have before you is your report with very similar information that was provided at the last council meeting. The only change in the resolutions you'll note is the removal of the 219 covenant component for 2 years delayed time if it was tied to the resort's master plan update. We removed that component with the applicant's approval. So the 219 covenant would only be for 5 years. It would be a time duration and is not tied to a third party. Thank you, Richard.
Discussion on the motion. Councillor Williams?
I have two questions for Mr. Strachan. Mr. Strachan, with respect to the amendment that was made, was that in consultation with the owner? I mean, is the owner on side with this, or is he aware of this?
Your worship, yes, we consulted and sought advice on it and then spoke with the applicant and did get their approval they supported that amendment.
And secondly, I noticed that there are questions that came up from the APC. When are they going to be addressed? I realize that you've got something in here that before the public hearing, there's going to be some report. Are they going to address those concerns raised by the APC?
Your worship, so the process is we bring these large applications in a raw format to the Advisory Planning Commission to get their initial input. And that's to help with our reporting to council so that we hear from this group which represents a cross-section of the community in advance of making recommendation to council. So we take whatever the applicant has submitted straight to the APC. They provided a response back to that. The application was then refined before we came to council. It will go back to APC if council approves it to go forward for first and second reading and a public hearing is scheduled. It will go to the next APC and they'll provide their comments on what's been, what the application now is, as well as the recommendations that we've made to council. So they'll provide feedback for both of those components, and those will be incorporated into the input for the public hearing. So we make 2 trips to APC, similar to how we make 2 trips to council at these larger projects, so that they have an opportunity to review it in its raw format, and then after with staff's recommendations.
I spoke against this whole application at the last council meeting, and I feel obligated to do the same thing today. I have a lot of concerns with what we are proposing here. I did initially support a tree hotel concept, and I still do support the tree hotel concept. I'm concerned that with this OCP change and zoning change that we are going much farther beyond what a tree hotel was introduced originally. I'm concerned that we are going to have a disjointed based village at the resort. I'm concerned about extra competition, not only for the resort, but for the downtown, for the highway, and I don't think that this is the right thing to do. And you look at the original drawing of the master plan, this property was recognized as residential. I think that the proper thing to do would be to support a smaller tree hotel, and the rest of the property would be single-family residential. And so I will be voting against the motion. Any more discussion on the motion? Councillor Orlando and then Councillor Brothers.
Yeah, Your Worship, a couple questions of staff regarding the section 219 covenant with the 2-year time frame on it. The report notes that the city had concerns with that, and I was wondering if we could elaborate on what this concerns are.
Mr. Strachan?
Your worship, the concern is it involves the action of a third party. The 219 covenant should be between the city and the landowner. As soon as you involve the action of a third party or the lack of action of the third party, it creates issue for us, which is why it's recommended to be removed. It was the lower of the thresholds. The 5-year was the higher of the threshold. So with the applicant's agreement, we just went to the higher of the thresholds, which is 5 years. So it would only be, the 219 would only be released based on time.
Councilor Brothers?
I guess a question for Mr. Strachan. Have we received any feedback from RMR with respect to this recently, or are we waiting until the public hearing and allowing them to do their feedback at that time?
Your worship, we haven't solicited comment back from anyone on this at this point. The application has only been accepted and approved to proceed. Now the bylaws are coming forward to council. If council approves the bylaws to proceed in the scheduling of a public hearing, notification letters go out, the public consultation component begins, where we'd be soliciting input from the different groups. The adjacent neighbor being the resort, they would receive a letter requesting their participation.
Any more discussion on the motion? Councilor Lund?
Your worship, I note that in the options and discussion section of the staff report, there's an option put forward to council to hold an open house. I realize it was discussed last time about, I do feel that holding an open house prior to a public hearing is a good idea. I realize that there are not a lot of neighbors in this neck of the woods. However, I think it would be, I think there's quite a lot of public interest in this, and that it would be beneficial to have something to get those questions answered prior to the public hearing.
Mr. Strachan? Oh, sorry, Councilor, were you finished?
Sure.
Your worship, there would sort of be two options with that particular option. We could go with an open house in advance of the actual public hearing and have staff and the developer available for an hour and a half in advance of the public hearing when people could come ask questions. We did that previously and that worked very well. The council could schedule a separate open house event if they wish. We didn't recommend that component because of the number of people who are directly impacted by it and the level of engagement that we've already seen. There isn't a need for this to be advertised to the people and the stakeholders. They're engaged already. So that's normally the objective of an open house, is to get people informed that this particular group surrounding this application, including the applicant themselves, appears to be at this point very well informed and very well engaged. But certainly an open house in advance of the public hearing, the last time we did that, it worked very well. We gave people the opportunity to ask staff and the developer direct questions before the public hearing actually took place. We certainly could look at that option if you so wish.
Councilor Duke, did you have your hand up?
I did, yeah. Aaron can finish on the same vein.
Your worship, I'd like to, if it's necessary, I'd like to make a motion to that effect, and my preference is for an open house that's not right before the public hearing, a few days, a week, or whatever it need be.
Mr. Strachan?
Your worship, I'd ask council to consider that resolution at the end.
Okay.
If we proceed through the rest of these resolutions and the
Okay.
first and second reading is granted, that we can look towards the end and I'll remind council.
Okay.
Councilor Duke?
I just think it's worth noting, we did have a lot of discussion and debate about this at our last meeting, and I still have the same feelings towards it. I'm in support of the motion. We had a innovation development meeting last night. There was about 75 people at it. The proponent was there. And we were discussing at our last meeting, it would be nice to see the proponent and RMR have some discussion. That discussion has started, which is a good thing to hear from him last night. And I don't know if I'm in favor of having a public open house for this particular comments.
Discussions on the motion? All those in favor? Against? I vote against, motion's carried. Item 2?
Moving forward, that pursuant to section 4752A of the Local Government Act, Council has considered whether the opportunities for consultation with one or more of the persons, organizations, and authorities should be early and ongoing, and determined that it is not necessary. And that pursuant to section 472B of the Local Government Act, council has considered whether consultation is required with specific external agencies and determined that it is not necessary. And that pursuant to section 476 of the Local Government Act, council has consulted with the Board of Education for School District number 19. And that pursuant to section 4773 of the Local Government Act, council has determined that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2109 is consistent with the City of Revelstoke's current financial plan and solid waste management plan.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Lando?
Your worship, through the chair, more for public information and I guess council's information. It says that this application is consistent with the solid waste management plan. And I'm just seeking a little bit more information from staff on what that means at this point.
Mr. Strachan?
Your worship, as a commercial operation, they would be required to provide their own garbage enclosures and their own bin service. They would not be receiving can service to their properties.
Motion's on the floor. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor? Against? I'm against, and motion's carried. Item number 3.
That official community plan bylaw number 2109 be read a second time and staff be directed to schedule a public hearing.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Have we set a date for this public hearing? Or are we contemplating a date?
Your worship, in consulting with the CAO, will establish a date following this meeting should it be approved.
Councillor Brothers?
The only comment I'd like to make is if RMR and the applicant are in fact discussing, I want to make sure that we give them enough lead time to conclude their discussions so we don't interfere with that.
I guess I would like to recommend that this public hearing, which obviously is going to be approved, to move forward, be held in September. I think having it over the summertime and expecting meetings and information to be gathered, I think is, I don't think is realistic. Councillor Nixon?
Is that really fair to the person that is trying to develop their land and coming forward to ask us to put a process in place? I don't think so.
Mr. Strachan?
Your worship, if we could maybe consider that at the end with the public open house component, because that public open house component that council adds as a component to it would impact our timelines. So it may be an opportunity to include both of those items for discussion.
Motion's on the floor. Is there any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? I vote against, and the motion is carried.
Number 4, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2110 be read a first and second time and staff be directed, that was right. Yep, and staff be directed to schedule a public hearing.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? I can vote against, and the motion is carried.
Number 5, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2118 be read a first and second time and staff be directed to schedule a public hearing.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Lando. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? I'm going to vote against, and the motion is carried.
6, that the condition precedent to consideration of adopting a zoning amendment bylaw number 2118 approved by City Council on June 14, 2016 be rescinded and the following be substituted, therefore, items A through E as seen in the agenda.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. And, I think the only real change which you alluded to earlier was the 5-year. So what we're talking about?
That's correct, Your Worship. The only change to that resolution and why we asked for council to rescind the first set was the 2-year component has been removed.
Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? I'm going to vote against, and the motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Strachan. Item C. Mr. Strachan? Oh, we got to talk about the... public hearing date or in the public information session.
Congratulations.
Does anybody, yes, Mr. Strachan?
So there's two pieces to that. There would be whether council wishes to, it's probably doing it two separately, it would be whether council wishes to do an open house in a format that is a separate event or an event pre to the formal open house, or sorry, pre to the formal public hearing. Whether council wishes to see a separate evening or that an hour and a half before the public hearing.
Looking for somebody to put a motion on the floor. Councillor Souls?
Your Worship, if I could ask a question before
Absolutely.
we put that forward. Councillor Orlando, you had expressed the desire to have a separate event prior to the public hearing. Is there a reason for that?
In my experience with other big public hearing open houses that we had, I felt that there was a lot of feedback from the public who felt it just happened too fast and that there wasn't enough information and that they felt the council just sort of decided what they had come forward with. I have no desire to delay this past the summer. Like we can have the open house one day and the meeting and then the public hearing the next day. That's fine with me. The sooner the better as far as I'm concerned.
Again, Your Worship, the desire to just separate that by a day versus an hour, would you think that would make a difference in the long run?
I just think it gives people a bit more time to digest the information and think about it. So.
Councillor Brothers?
And if I can ask, has there been, has the public sort of engaged or shown an interest in engaging this? Because I'm reluctant to agree that we should have an open house if as has been suggested, the only two parties in this who really are concerned about is RMR and the proponent. And if they are now discussing things, then I'm wondering why are we having this, you know? Other than just information to the public.
Mr. Strachan?
Your Worship, the input we received today has what's come to council. So the letters that have been received were brought forward to council, so we saw them in advance of the application. So RMR, the Accommodation Association, as well as the applicant themselves. So those are we haven't heard from any other parties at this point in time, but again, this is predating the actual opening to consultation, so letters haven't gone out, advertising hasn't taken place.
Well, I hope council doesn't have the impression that there's all these big meetings that are going on, because the impression I'm under is that there's been an introduction by email and there has been no meeting. Mr. Strachan?
Your Worship.
Yeah, and one side of it's gone on holidays, and there may be other people that are going to be going on holidays, and that's why I think that it's unrealistic to expect all these things to happen over the summer when people are taking holidays, and something this big, I don't think that we should be rushing through it, and if it's the sake of getting through the summertime and having a meeting in September, I don't think it's a big deal for the size of what we're talking about. Mr. Stratton.
Your Worship, as was noted at our last council meeting and was part of your resolutions that brought forward, we're encouraging the two parties to discuss, but we didn't include agreements or components between businesses that are independent of the city as part of this process, because it's a rezoning and LCP amendment process. We're encouraging council to let business do what they do as far as their business operations and negotiating between those two parties. The city's bylaws are not directly connected to those business negotiations that may take place as they move forward. They both have an interest in their own success, so allow those business operations hopefully to take place. And these bylaws take place independent of that discussion.
Councilor Rose.
From a timing perspective, I agree with your worship that I don't think there's any downside to doing it unless we hear from the proponent, but I don't see any downside to waiting until September for the public hearing so that we can let the process go through its appropriate course. So I'd be in favor of having the public hearing sometime in September if that's what council decides.
Councilor Lando.
I'm willing to put forward a motion. I just I disagree. I think we need to move the business forward. I would like to see an open house, so I would put forward a motion that staff schedule an open house and a public hearing in normal due course as they would have with no requirement for it to be in September.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Seconder for Councilor Reynolds' motion.
Wasn't that was a motion that you put on the floor?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion's on the floor is to have the public hearing and schedule it in the normal course of time. Is that
As well as an open house.
and an open house? Now, as the open house, are you saying that it's on the same day or a separate day or the day before, or are you not making that part of this?
I would prefer that, the open house to be ahead of time and not held on the same day, so.
Is that all right with the seconder of that motion?
Yeah, it's all right with me.
You get that? Mr. Strachan?
For council information, we would likely schedule it a week ahead. So just to allow staff resources for the both events.
Councilor Duke?
A couple things. One, like Dean just touched on staff resources putting together an open house. When we have something that has come forward, I think the Treehouse Hotel has been in the paper probably 15 times if you look at the different media throughout the town that's covered it. If you're in the town and don't know about the Treehouse Hotel, I think it would be quite difficult. So I don't know if there's another way to reach out to say if anyone has feedback, give us feedback. But to date, there's been zero that's come into City Hall. Whereas when we look at other things that we had at open house for, we had a flood of stuff coming into City Hall. So I don't know if it's something that, if we put on the same day just before, you have an open house and you can kind of give a little bit of information, it won't tie up staff resources as much. I'm concerned about dedicating a full evening to it.
Is there other discussion on that motion? Mr. Strachan?
Very briefly, Your Worship. If council at the public hearing feels that they have not adequately heard from the community, there's always the option of scheduling a second public hearing. So if they feel that there is a need for more time or more input and they haven't adequately consulted with the community or heard from the community at that point, that's always an option. It's not preferential, but it is an option. The council's not bound to complete the process at the end of that meeting.
Your Worship.
Go ahead, Councilor. I'm just looking for something, so I apologize.
Normal course of business, Mr. Strachan, timeline, what are we thinking about here? If we're talking normal course of business, are we talking sometime in July, talking sometime in August regarding the public hearing?
Your Worship, normally it would be with 4 weeks from this date, so we are on table with our publications to schedule for the next meeting, so it's normally 2 meetings out. With this one being in an evening in the rec center, we're going to have to review their schedule for availability. And it may not end up being on a council day. Our preference would be to do that, but it may not end up being on a council day. We'll have to look at schedules.
Well, I just want to say I agree with Councilor Duke that most people have heard about the Treehouse Hotel and really questioned whether there should be an open house before a public hearing. But what we're talking about now is hostels, hotels, accessory buildings, cafes, restaurants, helipad, open space, personal services, recreation facilities, trails, and then there's other things about it. Additional 1.5 story granted for building height, if there's underground parking provided, and it goes on and on with all these others. So it's drastically different than a treehouse hotel, and that is what my point is, and that's what my concern is. So. And I'm concerned that with the amount of change that the community may not be aware of, running this through for a normal course of business, I don't think is reasonable, and I think that people would look at it as that we are rushing something through that has a drastic change to what the original concept was, and that's what my concern is. I look at some of the conditions that, we're talking about the possibility of another base village, and the competition has put in a $5 or $5.5 million sewer and water line, they have to, after their phase one is complete, they have to provide 10% of their bed units towards employee housing. Are things like that being contemplated in this development? And I don't think that they are. So it's a big change, and that's what I'm concerned about. And I think we are moving too quickly and too far. Councilor Brothers.
But when I look at this, we're only approving the 25%. We're only approving the first phase. The next phase is 5 years down the road. So, you know, I think we have lots of time to figure out what's going on and deal with that next council. I'm inclined to say let's go ahead with this. The only concern I have is the timing. I do want RMR and the proponent to have an opportunity to have discussions. It's summertime. I'm worried about if we have a public hearing, you know, if people do want to attend, it's the summertime again, and it's, you know, so that's why I'm thinking that maybe September for a public hearing is the right way to go, and that's what I would prefer.
Councilor Sells.
Your Worship, I would concur on that, and the reason I asked for the date was we're halfway there just by regular business, so we're halfway through the summer. So we need that extra month and a half to do that, so that holiday time is over and that people have a chance to look at this actually in the fall or in September. I think would be probably the prudent thing to do. We're halfway there anyway, so why not we just go forward and do it when we know that probably everyone's going to be around and we'll be able to get the information.
Councilor Nixon.
I just think we need to bear in mind what our mandate is. This is a developer with capital, and he's going to ask to develop 25% of the area. And he's going to want some lead time this fall to start clearing that land if it's gone through, and to get it ready so that he can start building as early in the spring next year as he can. And I think it's our role to let his development go through the process in a fair, democratic fashion. But we're not responsible for that conversation between two businesses. And I think that they are starting to talk is a really good thing, and we encourage that. I think this development by itself needs to just follow due course.
Well, and I guess, Councillor, if we were just talking about 25% of the property and talking about OCP and zoning for the Tree Hotel, I think that everybody would be, I especially would feel a lot happier, but we're not. We're talking about OCP and zoning for the whole property. That has huge implications. We could talk about a 5-year time frame. Well, let's be realistic. How many hotels get built in the same area? Like, what's going to be built in 5 years? A Treehouse Hotel is going to be built, and maybe a second one might be started. So zoning one part of the property, which is what I suggested at the very start, I think is still reasonable. The other property stays in R1. It can come back and be rezoned if the timing is right, if the council of the day thinks that it works and fits in. But we're doing zoning today, and it's going to be there forever.
And your worship, we need to consider what's being built on the back of this mountain by another development component. So, you know, that's in the regional district, we don't know what that village is going to look like. So, you know, we have to just balance it.
Mr. Chabot.
Your Worship, but just for council's information, the 5-year no build, no disturb covenant doesn't fetter council's discretion to reconsider land use zoning on the entirety of the parcel or on the 75% reserve at some future date. This council and future councils will still have the right to consider land use and amend that zoning, whether an application were made or not, without recourse by the landowner, provided you retain some viable use or lawfully permitted use for that property. I'm somewhat, but not overly concerned by the prospect of leaving it until September, just because this process was commenced January of 2015, I believe. a significant amount has been invested. I don't like to see, I also don't like to see one application treated differently than the others. I agree that this probably deserves an open house. It's a big enough proposal, but delaying it by a period of months when significant investments have likely been made, there's a cost for money, and time is money.
Councilor Mando?
I'll just speak one more time in favor of the motion that I put forward, 3 points. Number one, in terms of delaying it until September, if this was a city project and we really wanted to make sure we had public consultation, that's fine. This is a private person, a private application, and I think we should move it through according to normal due process. Number two, there's a lot of details in here. For example, helicopter pads, helicopters, how does that work? I'm sure the neighbors and residents would like to find out about those and many other details. Just have an opportunity to go out for an hour and a half to a meeting and ask the questions and get those things solved. Number three, the way, as we just heard from staff, this is going to delay the process by 1 week, just 1 week, and I think that's appropriate, just to let everyone have, just who wants information, come out and find out a little bit more information.
Well, here's hoping the neighbors aren't on holidays when their property next door neighbor gets rezoned. Councilor Sauce.
Your Worship, just in regards to what Mr. Chabot has said and the other councillors, I would support us going forward in due course.
Motion on the floor is to move forward in due course with the public hearings on a separate date. Is there any more discussion on the motion?
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what Aaron's motion is. Can you please repeat that?
Well, it's having a public hearing in normal course of action, which would have it over the summertime. I'm not sure when that would be, end of July, first council meeting in August, whatever normal timelines would apply to this development. And then Mr. Strack is recommending that the public information session, which is part of the motion, be held the week prior to the public hearing. Okay. Did I miss anything? Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Against? Motion's carried.